council of alphas surrounds her, demanding blood for her crime. She clutches the baby tighter as the Alpha King's eyes find hers across the chamber. He doesn't know yet, doesn't know the child she protected is his. One word from him decides if they both live or die. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. The kitchen was a disaster when Sophia arrived. Grease coated every surface, pots sat abandoned in cold water, and something that might have once been soup had congealed into a substance that defied description. She stood in the doorway of the pack house, her sleeping daughter nestled against her shoulder, and seriously considered turning around and walking back out into the snow. Anything would be better than this. Almost anything. The job posting had been simple. Cook needed for Alpha's household, room and board included, generous salary, no questions asked about past pack affiliations. That last line was what had caught her attention, what had made her pack up everything she owned, strap her 8-month-old daughter to her chest, and trek through 3 territories to reach the Shadowpine pack lands. No questions asked meant they wouldn't dig into why a 24-year-old Omega was traveling alone with an infant and no mate. Wouldn't ask why she carried the scent of rogue on her skin like a brand. Wouldn't care that she was running from something or someone, and had been for the better part of a year. The Alpha King's cook, an elderly woman named Beatrice, who'd been showing Sophia around, clucked her tongue at the state of the kitchen. Those warriors eat like they're starving and clean up like they're blind. His Majesty has been very patient, but even he's getting tired of finding mysterious substances growing in corners. Sophia shifted her daughter's weight and surveyed the space with a practiced eye. It was salvageable. Barely. But she'd worked with worse. When do I start? Beatrice's weathered face broke into a smile. Tomorrow morning, 5 sharp. You'll prepare breakfast for His Majesty and his personal guard, lunch for the household staff, dinner for anyone who happens to be in residence. The numbers vary, but never less than 20, sometimes as many as 50. She paused, her expression turning serious. And there's one more thing. His Majesty doesn't like to be disturbed during meals. You'll prepare everything, lay it out, and leave before he enters. He prefers to eat alone. Sophia nodded, relief flooding through her. Perfect. The less contact with the Alpha King, the better. She'd learned the hard way that powerful alphas meant trouble, especially for Omegas with secrets. The cottage Beatrice showed her to was small, but clean, tucked away from the main pack house with a private entrance and thick walls that would muffle a crying baby. It was more than she'd dared to hope for. The furniture was simple but sturdy, a bed, a dresser, a rocking chair by the fireplace, and miracle of miracles, a separate alcove where she could set up her daughter's crib. "Thank you," Sophia said quietly, meaning it. "This is perfect." Beatrice patted her arm with surprising gentleness. "You're running from something. I can see it in your eyes. Whatever it is, you'll be safe here. His Majesty protects his people, even the ones who just arrived, especially the ones who need protecting most." After Beatrice left, Sophia laid her daughter down in the crib and finally allowed herself to breathe. They'd made it. 3 territories, countless close calls, and more nights sleeping rough than she cared to count. But they'd made it to a place where maybe, just maybe, they could start over. She looked down at her sleeping baby, at the shock of dark hair, and the features that were already starting to show hints of the father who'd never know she existed. Aurora. She'd named her for the dawn, for new beginnings, for the hope that someday they'd find peace. The baby stirred, making soft sounds in her sleep, and Sophia felt her heart clench with fierce protective love. Everything she'd done, every risk she'd taken, every law she'd broken. It was all for this tiny person who depended on her completely. She would give Aurora the life she deserved, even if it meant working herself to exhaustion in some alpha's kitchen, even if it meant hiding forever, even if it meant never telling Aurora the truth about her father. The next morning came brutally early. Sophia was in the kitchen by 4:30, Aurora strapped to her back in a sling, wide awake and gurgling happily. The baby had always been an early riser, which had made their journey both easier and harder. Easier because Sophia never overslept. Harder because crying babies attracted attention, and attention was the last thing they needed. She worked quickly, efficiently, letting muscle memory take over as she transformed chaos into order. By 5, she had bread rising, eggs whisking, bacon sizzling, and a massive pot of oatmeal bubbling on the stove. The kitchen smelled like heaven, yeast and cinnamon, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. The warriors who stumbled in for breakfast looked shocked to find actual food waiting for them. One of them, a scarred beta with kind eyes, actually teared up at the sight of fresh pastries. "Goddess bless you," he mumbled through a mouthful of cinnamon roll. "We've been living on protein bars and whatever we could scavenge from the mess hall. Beatrice said things were bad, but I didn't realize how bad." The beta, whose name she learned was Donovan, grinned. "You have no idea. His Majesty's been cooking his own meals for the past week. An Alpha King. Cooking." It was almost too pathetic to contemplate. Sophia finished laying out the Alpha's breakfast on the formal dining table. Everything arranged exactly as Beatrice had instructed. Fresh fruit, perfectly cooked eggs, toast with 3 types of jam, and coffee so dark it could strip paint. She was heading back to the kitchen when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, measured, radiating authority even in their rhythm. She'd promised herself she wouldn't look, would keep her head down, do her job, stay invisible. But Aurora chose that exact moment to let out a loud, happy squeal from her position on Sophia's back. The footsteps stopped. Sophia froze, her hand on the kitchen door, every muscle in her body screaming at her to run. But running would draw more attention. Running would raise questions. So she turned, slowly, keeping her eyes lowered in a show of submission that made her skin crawl. The Alpha King stood in the doorway to the dining room. And even without meeting his gaze, Sophia could feel the power rolling off him in waves. He was tall, built like a warrior who'd seen centuries of combat, dark hair touched with silver at the temples, a presence that filled the entire space and demanded acknowledgement. "You're the new cook." His voice was deep, controlled, with an edge of something she couldn't identify. "Yes, Your Majesty." Sophia kept her tone neutral, professional. "Breakfast is laid out as requested. I'll return in an hour to clear the dishes." There was a long pause, too long. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. What had she done wrong? Was he going to fire her on the first day? Demand to know why an Omega with a baby was seeking refuge in his territory? "The baby," he said finally. "How old?" 8 months, Your Majesty. She'll be quiet during working hours." "I have a sling to keep her close, and she's very well behaved." Another pause. Then, unexpectedly, bring her forward. Sophia's blood ran cold. This was it. He'd seen something, recognized something, realized that Aurora wasn't just any baby. But she had no choice. Refusing a direct order from an Alpha King was suicide. She moved closer, her hands trembling, as she unstrapped the sling and brought Aurora around to her front. The baby looked up at the massive Alpha, and instead of crying like any sensible infant, broke into a huge, gummy smile. The Alpha King stared down at Aurora for what felt like an eternity. Sophia watched his face, trying to read his expression, but he might as well have been carved from stone. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than before. "What's her name?" "Aurora," Sophia whispered. "Your Majesty. If her presence is a problem, I can make other arrangements. I can work nights when she's sleeping, or find someone to watch her during the day. I just keep her with you." The king's words were clipped, final. "As long as she doesn't interfere with your work, she's welcome in the kitchen." He turned away abruptly, moving toward the dining room. Sophia was preparing to flee when his voice stopped her. "The food is excellent. Thank you." Sophia managed a shaky, "You're welcome, Your Majesty," before escaping to the kitchen. She leaned against the counter. Aurora clutched to her chest and tried to calm her racing heart. That had been too close. Far too close. The way he'd looked at Aurora, with such intensity, such focus. Had he seen the resemblance? Did he know? No, she told herself firmly. He couldn't know. It was impossible. She'd been so careful, had covered her tracks so thoroughly. And besides, what were the odds that she'd end up working for him of all people? The universe couldn't be that cruel. Could it? The days fell into a rhythm. Sophia would rise before dawn, Aurora strapped to her back, and transform the kitchen into a place of warmth and wonderful smells. The household staff adored her. The warriors worshipped her, and slowly, despite her determination to remain invisible, she found herself becoming part of the pack in small, subtle ways. But it was the Alpha King who occupied her thoughts far more than was safe or smart. She'd expected him to ignore her after that first morning, to retreat into the solitude Beatrice had described. Instead, he started appearing in the kitchen at odd hours, never speaking much, just watching her work with those intense silver eyes that seemed to see straight through every wall she'd built around herself. It should have terrified her. Instead, to her horror, she found herself hyper-aware of his presence, would catch herself arranging plates with extra care when she knew he'd be eating from them, would linger over his coffee, making sure the temperature and strength were exactly right, would find excuses to stay in the dining room a few extra seconds when she delivered his meals, just to catch a glimpse of him. It was madness. Dangerous, reckless, madness. But she couldn't seem to stop, couldn't stop noticing how his hands looked when he held a coffee cup, strong and scarred and oddly gentle. Couldn't stop thinking about the sound of his voice, especially late at night when Aurora wouldn't settle and Sophia's mind wandered to forbidden places. One evening, 3 weeks after she'd started, Sophia was preparing dinner when Aurora began to fuss. The baby had been teething all day, miserable and inconsolable, and Sophia's nerves were frayed to breaking. "She's hurting," Sophia murmured, bouncing Aurora gently while trying to stir a pot of stew with her free hand. "I know, sweetheart. I know it's awful. I'm so sorry. Here." The voice came from directly behind her, and Sophia nearly jumped out of her skin. The Alpha King stood there, holding out a small piece of cloth that had been chilled in ice. "For the teething. It helps." Sophia stared at the cloth, then at him, completely unable to process the situation. You know about teething? I had a daughter once." His voice was flat, emotionless, but something in his eyes made Sophia's chest ache. A long time ago, before she could think better of it, before her survival instincts could scream at her to shut up and stay invisible, Sophia heard herself ask, "What happened to her?" "She died." The two words fell like stones into still water, along with her mother. 20 years ago. I'm so sorry, Sophia whispered. She didn't know what else to say. What could anyone say to that kind of loss? The king handed her the cloth, and when Sophia pressed it gently against Aurora's swollen gums, the baby's cries immediately quieted to whimpers. Thank you, Sophia said softly. The king nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. What made you decide to name her Aurora? Sophia's heart lurched. Careful. Be so careful. It means dawn, new beginnings. I wanted her to have a name that represented hope, no matter how dark things got. He was quiet for a moment. Then, it's a good name. She's lucky to have a mother who thinks about such things. He left before Sophia could respond, disappearing into the hallway like a ghost. She stood there, Aurora quieting in her arms, and felt something dangerous taking root in her chest. She was starting to care about him, about this alpha king who'd lost everything and still took the time to help a teething baby, who ate alone but made sure his people were fed, who carried grief like a physical weight but never let it break him. It was foolish, worse than foolish. It was potentially fatal, because if she let herself care, if she let her guard down even for a moment, he might see the truth, might realize that Aurora's eyes, that particular shade of silver blue, were not random chance, might connect the dots that Sophia had spent the past year desperately scrambling to hide. But as the weeks turned into months, maintaining that distance became harder and harder. He started joining her in the kitchen more often, ostensibly to check on supplies or discuss menu planning, but really just to talk about inconsequential things at first, the weather, pack politics, the latest territorial dispute. But gradually, as winter deepened and the evenings grew longer, their conversations turned more personal. Tell me about Aurora's father, he said one night. Sophia had been kneading bread, Aurora asleep in a basket by the fire, when the question came out of nowhere. She froze, her hands buried in dough, every nerve in her body screaming danger. He's not in the picture. Her voice was carefully neutral, and he won't be. Ever. Did he hurt you? The sudden steel in the king's voice made Sophia look up. He was standing across the kitchen from her, but his posture had changed, gone from relaxed to predatory in an instant. Because if he did, if he laid a hand on you or the baby, I'll hunt him down myself. No. Sophia said it quickly, firmly. He didn't hurt me. He doesn't even know she exists. And that's how I need it to stay. Why? It's complicated. Try me. I'm an alpha king. Complicated is my entire existence. Sophia looked down at the dough, at her hands still working it even though her brain had stopped functioning. She couldn't tell him, couldn't risk it. But goddess, she was so tired of lying, so exhausted from carrying this secret alone. He was promised to someone else, she said finally. A strategic match. Important for his pack. When I realized I was pregnant, I knew I had two choices: tell him and watch him choose duty over us, or disappear and give Aurora a chance at a normal life. I chose to disappear. The king was quiet for a long moment. Then, he's a fool. Any man who wouldn't move heaven and earth for his child doesn't deserve to be called father. He doesn't know, Sophia repeated, and he never can. My daughter deserves better than to be someone's obligation, someone's shameful secret. She deserves to be wanted, chosen, loved without conditions. Sophia realized she was crying only when a tear dropped onto the dough. She wiped at her eyes roughly, angry at herself for showing weakness. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. You have nothing to apologize for. The king crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and, before Sophia could process what was happening, gently pulled her hands out of the dough. His fingers were warm against her flour-covered skin, his touch impossibly gentle for someone so powerful. Aurora is lucky to have you, and her father, whoever he is a fool who lost something precious because he couldn't see past duty to love. The words hit Sophia like a physical blow, because she knew in that moment that he was talking about more than just Aurora's absent father. He was talking about himself, about the daughter he'd lost, about choices made and regrets carried. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saying that, for caring." He cupped her face then, his thumb brushing away tears, and Sophia felt her entire world tilt on its axis. The attraction she'd been fighting for months blazed to life, undeniable and overwhelming. She could see her own desire reflected in his eyes, could feel the tension crackling between them like lightning. They were standing too close. His hand was still on her face. She could smell him, pine and snow, and something wild that made her wolf, dormant for so long, stir with interest. All she had to do was lean forward, just a few inches, just Sophia. Her name on his lips was a question and a plea and a warning all at once. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is a terrible idea and we should forget this ever happened." She should. She knew she should. But instead she heard herself whisper, "Don't stop." He kissed her then, and it was nothing like Sophia had imagined. Not gentle or tentative, but fierce and claiming and desperate. Like he'd been starving for this, for her, and couldn't hold back another second. She kissed him back with equal hunger, her flour-covered hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even though closer would never be close enough. The heat between them was instantaneous and all-consuming. Sophia felt like she was burning alive, every nerve ending sparking to life, every carefully constructed wall crumbling to dust. His hands were in her hair, on her waist, everywhere and nowhere near enough. She wanted more, needed him with an intensity that should have terrified her. He lifted her onto the counter, stepping between her legs, and Sophia wrapped herself around him like she could absorb him into her skin. The kiss deepened, turned molten, and she could feel how hard he was against her, how much he wanted this too. Could feel her body responding, growing slick and ready, aching to be filled. "Your Majesty," a voice called from the hallway. "Are you in the kitchen? We have that meeting with the council in 5 minutes." They broke apart like scalded cats. Sophia scrambled off the counter, her face burning, her body still thrumming with need. The king's eyes were wild, his carefully controlled mass completely shattered. "We can't," Sophia whispered. "This is insane," the king finished. "Reckless? Completely inappropriate?" "Yes, all of that. I know." She could see him physically pulling himself together, rebuilding those walls brick by brick. But when he looked at her, there was heat in his eyes that promised this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. This conversation isn't finished. With that, he left, and Sophia stood alone in the kitchen, her lips still burning from his kiss, her body still aching for his touch, and her mind screaming warnings that she was already too far gone to heed. That night, lying in bed with Aurora sleeping peacefully nearby, Sophia replayed the kiss over and over, the way his hands had felt on her body, the taste of him, the barely leashed power in his touch, the absolute certainty that if they'd been somewhere private, if that interruption hadn't come, they would have torn each other's clothes off and damn the consequences. She touched herself in the darkness, imagining it was his hands exploring her body, his mouth on her throat, her breasts, lower, his thick length pushing inside her, claiming her, making her his in the most primal way possible. She came with his name on her lips, muffling the sound in her pillow, and immediately hated herself for it. This was wrong. So completely, utterly wrong. He was the Alpha King. She was a rogue Omega hiding in his territory under false pretenses, and worst of all, Aurora's father, though he didn't know it, would never know it, unless Sophia's carefully constructed lies came crashing down around her. The next few days were torture. They orbited around each other like binary stars, pulled inexorably together but never quite touching. Every glance was loaded with meaning. Every accidental brush of hands sent electricity skittering across Sophia's skin. The sexual tension was thick enough to choke on, and Sophia was fairly certain the entire household staff could sense it. Beatrice certainly could. She cornered Sophia in the pantry one afternoon, her eyes twinkling with mischief. His Majesty seems in better spirits lately. Wonder what could have changed. Sophia focused intently on inventorying flour sacks. I wouldn't know. Oh, I think you would. Beatrice's smile was knowing. I've worked for him for 40 years, child. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Not since. She trailed off, tactfully not finishing the sentence. Not since he lost his mate and daughter. Sophia's hands stilled. He loved them very much, more than life itself. Beatrice's voice turned sad. When they died, something in him died too. He's been a good king, a strong leader, but he's been hollow, going through the motions without really living. Until you arrived. I'm just the cook. You're so much more than that. And I think you know it. Sophia wanted to argue, to insist that Beatrice was reading too much into professional interactions. But she couldn't, because it was true. Whatever was happening between her and the king, it was real and powerful and utterly terrifying. That evening the king found her in the garden. She'd brought Aurora out for fresh air, letting the baby crawl through the grass while Sophia harvested herbs for dinner. The sight of them together, mother and child bathed in golden afternoon light, made something in his chest crack wide open. She's beautiful, he said quietly, announcing his presence, so he wouldn't startle them. Looks just like you. Aurora doesn't look anything like me, Sophia said with a small laugh. She has her father's coloring, the dark hair, the eyes. She glanced up at him, and the king saw fear flash across her face. Quickly masked, but not quickly enough. He filed that away for later consideration. I wanted to apologize, he said, moving closer. For the other night. I shouldn't have. Don't. Sophia cut him off. Don't apologize for something we both wanted. That would make it worse. So you wanted it? His voice dropped, turned rough with suppressed desire. Wanted me? Sophia stood, brushing grass off her knees, and the king couldn't help but track the movement. Couldn't help imagining her on her knees for an entirely different reason. You know I did. Her honesty was like a match to kindling. Then what are we doing? Why are we pretending this isn't happening? Because I'm nobody, Sophia said quietly. I'm a rogue Omega with a baby and a past I can't talk about. You're the Alpha King. This could never work. I don't care about your past, and you're not nobody to me. He took another step closer. You're everything I didn't know I needed, everything I thought I'd lost the right to want. The king, Sophia whispered. Kyle. My name is Kale. And when we're alone, I want you to use it. Kyle. She tested the name on her tongue, and he nearly groaned at the sound of it. It's a good name. Strong. He was close enough now to touch her, close enough to see the pulse fluttering in her throat, close enough to smell the sweet scent of her arousal mixing with lavender from the herbs. I want you, Sophia. I want you so badly I can barely think straight. But I need you to understand what that means. What I'm offering. Tell me. I'm offering you everything. Not just my protection or my territory, but me. All of me. The broken parts and the healed parts and everything in between. Sophia's breath hitched. Kyle, I can't. I'm not who you think I am. There are things you don't know. Things that would change everything if you knew. Then tell me. Let me decide what matters and what doesn't. But she couldn't. The truth would destroy this fragile thing between them before it even had a chance to bloom. The truth would take Aurora's father away from her forever. No, Sophia said, and it cost her everything to say it. I can't do this. I'm sorry. She scooped Aurora up and fled, leaving Kale standing alone in the garden, watching the woman who'd somehow become essential to his existence walk away. He should let her go, should respect her boundaries and maintain professional distance. But Kale had spent 20 years being the dutiful king, putting his people's needs above his own desires, living half a life because he didn't deserve more. He was done with that. For the first time in 2 decades, he wanted something for himself, and what he wanted was Sophia. The following night, Kyle came to her cottage. Sophia answered the door in her nightgown, Aurora already asleep, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked soft and sleep-rumpled, and so beautiful it hurt to look at her. I shouldn't be here, Kale said. This breaks about 17 different protocols. Then why are you here? Because I can't stay away. Because I've tried to respect your boundaries and give you space. But every time I close my eyes, all I can see is you. Sophia's hands trembled as she gripped the doorframe. You need to leave. I know. He didn't move. Tell me you don't want this. Tell me you don't feel this pull between us, and I'll walk away. I'll never mention it again. But if you do feel it, if you want me even a fraction as much as I want you, let me in. Sophia's resolve crumbled. She stepped back, opening the door wider. And Kale entered like a man stepping into salvation or damnation. He wasn't sure which. They stood in her small living room, the fire crackling in the hearth, Aurora's soft breathing the only sound beyond their own racing hearts. Neither moved. The tension was so thick Kale could taste it, electric and alive and demanding release. I need to tell you something, Sophia said finally, about Aurora's father. Later. Right now, all that matters is this. He closed the distance between them and kissed her like a man possessed. Sophia melted into him, her arms winding around his neck, her body pressing against his with desperate need. This kiss was different from the first, more urgent, more certain, weighted with the knowledge that this time there would be no interruptions. This time, they would finish what they'd started. Kyle's hands found the hem of her nightgown, and she helped him pull it over her head, revealing the body that had haunted his dreams for months. She was curvy and soft and utterly perfect. He traced the stretch marks on her stomach, the evidence of the child she'd carried, and felt something primal stir in his chest. These are beautiful. Sophia flushed. They're not. I'm not. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. He kissed her again, walking her backward toward the bedroom, his hands mapping every inch of newly exposed skin. Sophia was equally eager, tugging at his clothes until he helped her strip them away. When they were both naked, standing at the foot of her bed, Kale took a moment just to look at her, to memorize this. The way the firelight painted her skin gold, the way her pupils were blown wide with desire. the way she looked at him like he was everything she'd ever wanted. "Are you sure?" he asked, giving her one last chance to back out. "Yes." Sophia pulled him down onto the bed with her. "I've never been more sure of anything." Their first time was fast and desperate, months of pent-up longing exploding in a frenzy of hands and mouths and bodies seeking connection. Cale entered her with one deep thrust, and Sophia cried out, her nails digging into his shoulders as she adjusted to his size. He stilled, giving her time, fighting the urge to simply take and claim and mark her as his. "You feel incredible," he groaned against her throat. "So tight and wet and perfect." She rocked her hips experimentally, and Cale nearly lost his mind. He began to move, building a rhythm that had Sophia gasping and writhing beneath him. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, and Cale was lost. He pounded into her with abandon, chasing the release that had been building for what felt like forever. When Sophia shattered around him, crying out his name, Cale followed immediately, spilling inside her with a groan that came from his soul. They lay tangled together afterward, hearts racing, bodies slick with sweat. Cale traced lazy patterns on Sophia's skin and felt more at peace than he had in 2 decades. "That was," Sophia began. "Everything," Cale finished. "That was everything." The second time was slower. Cale explored every inch of her body with hands and mouth, learning what made her gasp, what made her moan, what made her beg. He kissed his way down her body and settled between her thighs, using his tongue to bring her to the edge again and again until she was sobbing with need. "Please," she begged. "Kyle, please. I know what you need." He slid 2 fingers inside her while his tongue worked her swollen pearl, and Sophia came apart with a cry that she muffled against her own hand, mindful of the sleeping baby in the next room. He kissed his way back up her body and entered her again, setting a deep, grinding rhythm that had them both climbing toward release. This time when they came, it was together, perfectly synchronized, and Cale felt the mate bond try to snap into place. He held it back, barely. Not yet, not until she trusted him with her secrets. They made love 3 more times that night, exploring each other with the desperation of people who'd been starving and finally found sustenance. By the time dawn approached, they were both exhausted and sated and wrapped around each other like they'd been made to fit together. "I should go," Cale murmured against her hair, "before the household wakes up and realizes the king spent the night with his cook." Sophia tensed slightly at the reminder of their positions. "We probably shouldn't do this again. Like hell we shouldn't." Kyle tightened his arms around her. "I'm not letting you go, Sophia. Not now. Not ever. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying." He tilted her face up to look at him. "I'm saying I want you. In my bed, in my life, by my side. I'm saying whatever secrets you're keeping, we'll face them together. I'm saying you and Aurora are mine now, and I protect what's mine." Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes. "You can't protect us from this." "From the truth? Then tell me the truth. Trust me with it." She wanted to. Goddess, how she wanted to. But the words stuck in her throat, too terrifying to voice. "Soon," she whispered instead. "I'll tell you soon, I promise." Cale kissed her gently. "I'll hold you to that." Over the next few weeks, they fell into a pattern. Cale would come to her cottage most nights after the household was asleep. They'd make love for hours, exploring and claiming and learning each other's bodies. And afterward, they'd talk about everything and nothing, about his grief and her fears, about his responsibilities and her dreams, about Aurora and the kind of life they wanted to give her. Kale was wonderful with the baby. He'd hold her with surprising gentleness for such a large man, making silly faces that had Aurora giggling uncontrollably. He'd walk her around the cottage when she was fussy, singing old lullabies in a language Sophia didn't recognize. He'd look at her with such tenderness that it made Sophia's heart ache. "I love her," he admitted one night, Aurora asleep on his chest. "I know I shouldn't. I know she's not mine, but I can't help it. She's gotten under my skin just like her mother." Sophia felt something crack in her chest. "Kale, there's something I need to tell you. About Aurora, about her father." The knock on the cottage door made them both freeze. Sophia grabbed her robe while Kale quickly pulled on his pants. When she opened the door, Beatrice stood there, her face grave. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Your Majesty, but there's an emergency. A delegation from the Council of Alphas has arrived. They're demanding an immediate audience." Kyle cursed under his breath. "At this hour? What do they want?" They wouldn't say, only that it's urgent and concerns a matter of pack law. Kale looked at Sophia, regret clear in his eyes. "I have to go, but we're not done talking. I want the truth, Sophia, all of it, tomorrow." She nodded, her stomach twisting with dread. Tomorrow. After Kyle left, Sophia stood in her cottage, Aurora sleeping peacefully, and felt the walls closing in. A delegation from the Council of Alphas, demanding an immediate audience. It couldn't be coincidence. Somehow, someone had found her, found them, and tomorrow, when Kyle demanded the truth, she would have to tell him everything. Would have to watch the love in his eyes turn to betrayal when he realized who Aurora really was. That night, Sophia barely slept. She held Aurora close and memorized every detail of her daughter's face. The way her lashes feathered against her cheeks, the little sounds she made in her sleep, the way her tiny hand curled around Sophia's finger, because tomorrow, everything might change. Tomorrow, she might lose everything she'd found here, the man she loved, the home they'd built, the future she'd dared to dream about. When morning came, Sophia dressed carefully and made her way to the pack house kitchen on autopilot. She prepared breakfast with hands that shook, Aurora unusually quiet in her sling, as if sensing her mother's distress. The king didn't come for breakfast, neither did anyone else. The pack house was eerily silent, everyone apparently in the council chambers dealing with whatever emergency the delegation had brought. Sophia was cleaning up, preparing to return to her cottage and pack in case she needed to run again, when Donovan appeared in the kitchen doorway. His kind face was troubled. "Sophia, His Majesty requests your presence in the council chamber. He says to bring Aurora." Her legs nearly gave out. This was it, the end of everything. "I'll be there in a moment." Donovan hesitated. "I don't know what's happening in there, but His Majesty he looks like he's about to start a war." "Oh, goddess." Sophia forced herself to breathe. "Thank you for the warning." The walk to the council chamber felt like walking to her own execution. Aurora was quiet in her arms, those silver blue eyes watching everything with unusual solemnity. When Sophia entered the chamber, she immediately understood why the pack house had been so empty. It seemed like every important member of Shadowpine Pack was crammed into the space, and at the center, facing a delegation of 7 alphas in formal regalia, stood Kyle. He looked like a king in that moment, powerful and dangerous, and absolutely in control. But when his eyes found Sophia's, she saw confusion there, and hurt. One of the delegation alphas, An older man with steel-gray hair stepped forward. "Is this the woman?" Kale's voice was ice. "This is Sophia, my cook." The Alpha's smile was cruel. "Is that what she told you? That she's just a cook?" Sophia felt the room tilt. No, this couldn't be happening. "I think you'll find," the Alpha continued, "that Sophia is much more than that. She's a thief, a kidnapper, and a criminal who's been evading pack law for nearly a year." "Lies," Sophia said, her voice shaking. "Whatever you think I did." "Quiet." Another Alpha spoke up. "We have evidence, testimony, and most damning of all, we have this." He held up a photograph. Sophia's blood ran cold. It was her and a man, a very specific man, taken at a pack gathering 2 years ago. The man in the photograph had dark hair and silver blue eyes, and those same features were clearly visible on the baby Sophia held in her arms. Kale stared at the photograph, then at Aurora, then at Sophia, and she watched his expression shift from confusion to realization to absolute devastation. "You said her father didn't know," he said quietly. "You said he was promised to someone else." "She is promised to someone else," Sophia whispered. "You are." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "No," Kyle breathed. "That's impossible. I would have known. I would have felt. You were grief-stricken when we met." Sophia's voice broke. "Your mate and daughter had just died. You weren't looking for connection. You were looking for oblivion. And I gave it to you. One night. That's all it was supposed to be. One night where we could both forget our pain. But then I realized I was pregnant, and you were already being pressured to take a new mate for political reasons, and I couldn't." She was crying now, unable to stop the words from pouring out. "I couldn't let you choose between duty and us. So I ran. I changed my name, hid my scent, and I ran." The Alpha who'd shown the photograph spoke again. "You ran with Alpha King Kale's child, his heir. That makes you guilty of kidnapping under pack law. The penalty is death." "Over my dead body," Kale snarled, and the power that rolled off him made every wolf in the room drop their eyes in submission. "Aurora is my daughter. Sophia is her mother, and anyone who threatens either of them will answer to me." "Your Majesty," the gray-haired Alpha said carefully, "we understand your emotional attachment, but the law is clear. She kept your child from you, denied you your heir. This cannot go unpunished. Then change the law." Kyle's voice was steel. "I am the Alpha King. If the law says protecting my child from political manipulation is a crime, then the law is broken and needs to be rewritten." Sophia stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. You're protecting me?" "Of course I'm protecting you." Kyle crossed to her in 3 strides and gently took Aurora from her arms. The baby looked up at him with those familiar silver blue eyes and smiled, reaching for his face with her tiny hand. "You gave me my daughter. You gave me a second chance at being a father. Did you really think I'd let anyone take that away? But I lied to you. For months, I lied. You protected our child the only way you knew how." Kale's eyes were fierce as they met hers. "I'm angry that you felt you had to, hurt that you didn't trust me. But I understand why you did it, and I understand that everything you did was out of love for Aurora. That's not a crime. That's a mother being a mother." The Council Alphas shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty," one of them tried, "this sets a dangerous precedent." "Then let it." Kyle handed Aurora back to Sophia and turned to face the delegation. "Let it be known that any Omega who feels she must flee to protect her child from politics or pressure has the right to do so. Let it be known that motherhood trumps political convenience, and let it be known that the Alpha King will hunt down anyone who tries to use pack law to tear families apart. The gray-haired Alpha looked like he'd swallowed something sour. Very well. We cannot compel you to punish your mate. You have that right, at least. She's not my mate. Kyle said it clearly, and Sophia felt her heart shatter. Yet, he turned to look at her, and the love in his eyes took her breath away. She hasn't agreed to be my mate, yet. But when she does, when she finally trusts me enough to accept the bond, then yes. Then she'll be my mate and my queen, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. The delegation left shortly after, their threats empty in the face of Kyle's absolute authority. When the council chamber finally emptied, Sophia and Kyle were left alone with Aurora. "I'm sorry," Sophia whispered. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you the moment I realized who you were, but I was scared. Terrified that you'd take her from me or force me into a mating I hadn't chosen or choose duty over us," Kale finished gently. "Like you thought I would 2 years ago?" Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know you're not that person anymore. I know you've changed, but by the time I realized that, I was already in so deep, already lying, already falling in love with you." She froze, realizing what she'd said. Kale's eyes blazed silver. "Say that again." "I love you," Sophia whispered. "I've loved you since that day in the garden when you showed me how to help with Aurora's teething. Maybe even before that. And I hate that I lied to you, hate that I hurt you, but I won't apologize for protecting our daughter." "Good." Kale pulled her close, careful of Aurora between them. "Because I love you too. I've loved you since the first morning when you looked at me like I was just a man instead of a king, when you made me feel like maybe I deserved a second chance at happiness." He kissed her softly. "I want this. I want us. I want to claim you as my mate and Aurora as my heir and build the family we should have had from the beginning. But I need to know, are you ready for that? Ready to be queen? Ready to let me claim you in front of the entire pack?" Sophia looked down at Aurora, then back at Kale. For months she'd been running, hiding, protecting her daughter from a future she'd thought would destroy them. But looking at Kale now, at this man who'd defended her against his own counsel, who'd chosen them over politics and convenience, she realized the truth. Aurora didn't need protection from her father. She needed her father. And Sophia didn't need to run anymore. She'd found home. "Yes," she said firmly, "I'm ready." The mating ceremony was held 3 days later, under a full moon that seemed to shine just for them. Every pack in the territory sent representatives, all of them witnessing the Alpha King claim his mate and acknowledge his daughter. When Kyle marked her, when the mate bond finally snapped into place after months of hovering just out of reach, Sophia felt complete in a way she'd never imagined possible. Aurora attended the ceremony, passed around by delighted pack members who couldn't get enough of their new princess. And when she let out a happy squeal during the final vows, everyone laughed. "Perfect timing," Kyle murmured against Sophia's newly marked throat. "She's already learning to make her opinion known. She's your daughter," Sophia replied with a smile. "What else would you expect?" That night, after the celebration ended and they were finally alone in Kale's chambers, he made love to her slowly and thoroughly, claiming every inch of her body as his, whispering promises against her skin, showing her with hands and mouth and his thick length buried deep inside her exactly how much she was wanted, loved, treasured. When they finally collapsed together, sated and bonded and complete, Sophia traced the mark on his shoulder that matched the one on her throat. I can't believe this is real, that I'm actually here, actually yours. You've always been mine, Kyle said, pulling her closer. From the moment we met 2 years ago, I just had to wait for you to realize it too. And Aurora? You're not angry that I kept her from you for so long? He was quiet for a moment. I wish I'd been there from the beginning. Wish I'd seen her first steps, heard her first words. But Sophia, you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. A family, a future, a reason to keep living instead of just existing. How could I be angry about that? Months turned into years. Aurora grew into a bright, curious toddler with her father's eyes and her mother's smile. She had her father wrapped completely around her little finger and knew it. The Shadow Pine Pack thrived under their leadership, Kale's strength balanced by Sophia's compassion. They became known as fair and just rulers who never forgot what it was like to hurt, to lose, to fight for survival. Sophia still cooked sometimes, much to the delight of the pack. She'd appear in the kitchen unannounced and make the warriors' favorite dishes, laughing when they tripped over themselves in gratitude. And every time she did, Kale would find an excuse to wander in and steal a taste, usually of her rather than the food. On Aurora's 3rd birthday, Sophia found Kale standing at the window of their chambers, watching their daughter play in the garden below. You're thinking about her, Sophia said softly, moving to his side. Your first daughter. He nodded. I was thinking about how she would have loved Aurora, how they would have been sisters, even with 20 years between them, and how grateful I am that I got a second chance, not to replace her. Nothing could ever do that, but to be a father again, to love again. Sophia leaned into his embrace. She'd want you to be happy, to live fully, to love Aurora with your whole heart. I know she would. He kissed the top of her head. You saved me, Sophia. You and Aurora. You took a broken man and showed him he could be whole again. No, Sophia corrected gently. You saved yourself. You chose to love again when it would have been easier to stay closed off. You chose us when duty would have been safer. You chose to believe that second chances are real. He turned her in his arms and kissed her properly, deeply, with all the love and passion that had only grown stronger over the years. When they broke apart, Sophia smiled up at him. Besides, I seem to remember you doing some saving of your own. You protected us when you didn't have to, defended us against the entire council of alphas, chose our family over politics. That's true love. It's the only kind of love worth having. That night, after Aurora was asleep and they lay tangled together in their bed, Sophia thought about the journey that had brought them here, the lies and the running, the fear and the hiding, the moment when everything had almost fallen apart, and the choice they'd both made to fight for this, for each other, for their family. You're thinking too loud, Kale murmured, his eyes still closed. I'm thinking about how lucky we are, that despite everything, despite all my mistakes, we found our way to each other. We were always going to find each other, Kale said, with absolute certainty. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. She just takes the scenic route sometimes. Sophia laughed softly. The scenic route. Is that what we're calling my year of terror and deception? That's what we're calling two broken people finding their way home to each other. He pulled her closer. Now stop thinking and let me worship you properly. He proceeded to do exactly that, hands and mouth mapping her body with the familiarity of years and the reverence of first love, When Sophia shattered around him, crying out his name into the darkness, she knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she belonged, not because fate had decided it, but because they had chosen it. Every day, through the fear and the secrets and the moments when everything seemed impossible, they had chosen each other, and they would keep choosing each other every day for the rest of their lives. Years later, when Aurora asked about how her parents had met, Sophia and Cale would exchange glances and smile. "It's complicated," Sophia would say. "I was hiding from my past and your father saved me. I was lost and your mother found me," Cale would add. "We both needed saving and we did it together." And when Aurora was old enough to understand the full story, they told her everything, about the grief and the mistakes, about the lies and the truth, about choosing love even when it was terrifying, about second chances and new beginnings. "Your mother is the bravest person I know," Cale told their daughter. "She protected you when I couldn't, gave up everything to keep you safe. Never forget that. And your father," Sophia added, "is the kindest man alive. He chose compassion over anger, love over pride, forgiveness over resentment. Those are the marks of a true king." Aurora, who had inherited her father's strength and her mother's heart, looked between her parents and smiled. "I know," she said simply. "I've always known." The three of them sat together in the garden where Sophia had once fled from Cale's confession, where Aurora had taken her first steps, where countless moments of joy and laughter and love had unfolded over the years. The rejected Omega, who had become queen, the grieving king who had learned to love again, and the child who had brought them together. A family forged not by destiny alone, but by choice, by courage, by the willingness to believe that broken things could be mended and that second chances were worth fighting for. As the sun set over Shadowpine territory, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber, Sophia leaned against Cale's shoulder and felt nothing but gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. Every lie she'd told had been in service of protecting the life growing inside her. Every mile she'd run had been leading her toward home, and every moment of fear had been worth it for this. For lazy evenings in the garden with the people she loved most, for Aurora's laughter echoing through the pack house, for Cale's hand warm in hers, solid and real and forever. "I'd do it all again," she said quietly, "every bit of it." "Even the running?" Cale asked. "Even the lies?" "Especially those," Sophia replied, "because they brought me here, to you, to us, to exactly where I was always meant to be." Cale kissed her temple. "Then I'm grateful for every second of it, even the parts that hurt, because they gave me you." But later that night, after Aurora was tucked in and sleeping peacefully, Cale pulled Sophia into their private chambers with a hunger that had been building all day. He pressed her against the door the moment it closed, his mouth claiming hers with fierce possession. "I need you," he growled against her lips. "I need to feel you. To know this is real, to remind myself that you're mine and not going anywhere." "I'm not going anywhere," Sophia promised, her hands already working at his clothes. "I'm yours, forever." He lifted her, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to their bed. The mating mark on her throat throbbed with the intensity of their bond, and Sophia could feel his desire pouring through it, mixing with her own until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. Cale stripped her slowly, his hands reverent as they mapped every curve, every line, every inch of skin he'd claimed as his. "You're so beautiful," he murmured, his mouth following the path his hands had traced. "So perfect, so mine." He worshipped her breasts with lips and tongue, taking his time with each one until Sophia was writhing beneath him, desperate for more. His hand slid between her thighs and found her already soaking wet, ready for him. "Always so ready for me," he praised, his fingers circling her swollen pearl. "Your body knows who it belongs to, doesn't it?" "Yes," Sophia gasped as he pushed 2 fingers deep inside her. "Yours, only yours." He worked her with skilled precision, building her pleasure higher and higher until she was trembling on the edge. But when she tried to reach for release, he pulled back, denying her. "Not yet," he commanded. "I want to taste you first, want to drink from you until you're sobbing my name." He settled between her thighs and used his tongue to drive her mad, licking and sucking and exploring every fold until Sophia was indeed sobbing, begging for mercy, for release, for anything. When he finally let her climax, it crashed over her like a tidal wave. So intense she saw stars. Before she could recover, Kyle was inside her, his thick length filling her completely in one deep thrust. He set a punishing pace, taking her hard and fast, one hand fisted in her hair while the other gripped her hip hard enough to bruise. "Mine," he snarled with each thrust. "My mate, my queen, my everything." Sophia could only hold on as he claimed her, her nails raking down his back, her body meeting his thrust for thrust. When her second climax hit, even stronger than the first, she screamed his name, and Kale followed immediately, spilling deep inside her with a roar that shook the windows. They collapsed together, hearts racing, bodies slick with sweat. Kyle rolled them so Sophia was draped across his chest, his arms locked around her like he'd never let go. "I love you," he said, pressing kisses to her hair. "More than I thought possible, more than I knew I was capable of." "I love you too," Sophia whispered back. "Thank you for giving me a second chance, for giving us a second chance." Hours later, when they'd made love twice more with equal intensity, Sophia lay awake watching Kale sleep. His face was peaceful in a way it never was during the day, all the weight of leadership temporarily lifted. She traced the mating mark on his shoulder, marveling at how perfectly it matched her own. The next morning, Sophia woke to Kale's mouth between her thighs, his tongue working magic that had her gasping awake. "Good morning," he murmured against her sensitive flesh. "I wanted to wake you properly." He brought her to climax with his mouth alone, swallowing her cries, before sliding up her body and entering her in one smooth motion. They made love slowly this time, savoring each sensation, each touch, each moment of connection. When they finally emerged from their chambers, both glowing with satisfaction, Beatrice took one look at them and smiled knowingly. "Well," she said cheerfully, "someone had a good night." Sophia blushed, but Kyle just grinned, unrepentant. "The best," he confirmed, pulling Sophia close and kissing her temple. "And I intend to have many more just like it." The days that followed established a new rhythm. Sophia still worked in the kitchen, but now she was acknowledged as the Alpha King's mate and future Luna. The pack members treated her with respect, but also with genuine affection. They loved how she cared for Aurora, how she fed them, how she made their king smile, and the nights were reserved for Kyle. For long hours spent exploring each other's bodies, for whispered confessions in the darkness, for the kind of passion that left them both breathless and satisfied, and wanting more. One evening, as they lay tangled together after particularly intense lovemaking, Kale traced patterns on Sophia's stomach. "I want more," he said quietly. "More children, brothers and sisters for Aurora, a house full of laughter and chaos and love, Sophia's heart swelled. I want that too. How many are we thinking? As many as you'll give me, Cale replied with a wicked grin, though I'm particularly enjoying the practice. They'd been trying for months when Sophia finally felt the telltale signs, the heightened senses, the fatigue, the way certain smells made her nauseous. When the pack healer confirmed her pregnancy, Sophia couldn't wait to tell Kyle. She found him in the training yard, sparring with his warriors. The moment he saw her face, he knew, dismissed the warriors immediately, and pulled her into his arms. We're having a baby, Sophia whispered. You're going to be a father again. The joy on his face was blinding. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure happiness. Thank you, he said, setting her down gently and dropping to his knees. His hands went to her still, flat stomach. Thank you for this gift, for trusting me with another child, for building this life with me. That night, he made love to her with exquisite tenderness, as if she was made of glass. Every touch was reverent, every kiss a promise. He worshipped her body for hours, bringing her to climax again and again, until she was limp and sated. I'm going to take care of you, he vowed as they lay together afterward. You and Aurora, and this new little one. You'll never want for anything, never doubt how loved you are. The pregnancy progressed beautifully. Kyle was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly checking on her, making sure she was eating enough, resting enough, happy enough. He talked to her growing belly every night, telling stories, singing songs, making promises to the child within. And when Sophia's body began to change, swelling with new life, Kyle's desire for her only intensified. He couldn't keep his hands off her, constantly touching, caressing, claiming. You're even more beautiful like this, he would say, his hands on her rounded belly. Carrying our child, glowing with life. You undo me completely. Their lovemaking during her pregnancy was slower, gentler, but no less passionate. Kyle would spend hours exploring her changing body, marveling at every new curve, every difference. And Sophia, her hormones raging, was often the one initiating, waking him in the middle of the night with urgent need. When their son was born, a healthy baby boy with Kyle's dark hair and Sophia's green eyes, the king wept openly. He held the tiny bundle with shaking hands, overwhelmed by love and gratitude and the sheer miracle of this second chance at fatherhood. We'll name him Adrian, Kyle said, his voice thick with emotion. After my father, if that's all right with you. It's perfect, Sophia agreed, watching her mate bond instantly with their son. Aurora, now a precocious 4-year-old, was immediately smitten with her baby brother. She appointed herself his protector, always making sure he was comfortable, always singing to him, always kissing his tiny forehead. You're going to be the best big sister, Sophia told her daughter, pulling her close. He's lucky to have you. And I'm lucky to have you, Kyle added, gathering all 3 of them into his arms. My family, my entire world. The years that followed were filled with joy and chaos and love. Adrian grew into a strong, curious toddler who followed his father everywhere. Aurora blossomed into a confident young girl who had both her parents wrapped around her finger. And Sophia and Kyle's love only deepened with time, their bond growing stronger with each challenge they faced together. They still made time for each other, stealing moments whenever they could. Quick kisses in empty hallways, heated encounters in the garden when the children were napping. Long nights spent exploring each other with the familiarity of years and the passion of new lovers. I still want you as desperately as I did that first night, Cale confessed one evening as they lay tangled together. Maybe more, because now I know exactly what I have, exactly what I could lose. You'll never lose me, Sophia promised. I'm yours. Always. They sat in comfortable silence as night fell around them, Aurora playing nearby, the sounds of their pack settling in for the evening creating a symphony of normalcy and peace. And Sophia realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not without its scars and its history, but real and earned and worth every sacrifice she'd made to protect it. The widow who'd hired on as a cook had found so much more than a job. She'd found family, found home, found the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. And the Alpha King who'd hired her, he'd found something he thought was lost forever. Hope, purpose, a reason to believe that broken hearts could heal, and that life's greatest gifts sometimes came wrapped in the most unlikely packages. Together, they'd built something beautiful from the ruins of their separate pasts, a love story written in second chances and hard-won trust, a family bound not just by blood but by choice, a future bright with possibility. And as Aurora's delighted laughter filled the evening air, Sophia and Cale smiled at each other with the certain knowledge that some things truly are worth fighting for. Some loves truly are meant to be, and some families truly do find each other, no matter how impossible the odds. The moon goddess, it seemed, really didn't make mistakes. She just required faith, courage, and the willingness to believe that the most extraordinary magic exists in the ordinary moments, in kitchen conversations and teething remedies, in shared meals and quiet evenings, in the way a child's eyes can hold the entire world, in the way a touch can heal years of grief, in the way love, when you finally stop running from it, has a way of catching up with you and transforming everything. This was their story. The cook and the king, the widow and the warrior, the mother protecting her child, and the father learning to love again. Two broken people who found each other in the midst of lies, and truth, and fear, and hope, who chose each other despite every reason not to, who built a family from fragments and faith, who proved that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never saw coming, the ones you fought against, the ones that scared you most, because those are the things worth keeping, worth protecting, worth choosing again and again every single day. And they lived, not happily ever after in some perfect fairy tale way, but beautifully, messily, completely. They lived with all the joy and sorrow and ordinary magic that comes with choosing love over fear, with building something real instead of something safe, with believing that second chances exist and that you deserve them, even when everything in your past says you don't. They lived fully, freely, together, and that, in the end, was everything.